Cardiff 1 and 2's English task for the 5th of May. So hi again, welcome back to year 3. Today we're going to be carrying on with the Night Gardener. We're going to be doing a bit more work around this. Today we're going to be looking at these two people. So using this picture to help us to do some writing. Okay, so let's have a look. So for today's task, we're going to be focusing on the characters so that we can write a description about those two characters. So the two main people that we're talking about in this story are William and the Night Gardener that we've just had a little look at. Feel free to go back and have another look later on if you want to. So today it's up to you who you choose to write about. So during my examples, I might write about the Night Gardener or I might write about William. You need to make sure that you've chosen one character that you stick with throughout. So you can't switch between the two. You are writing about either William or the Night Gardener. So make your choice and stick with it. Okay, so before we get writing about our two characters from this book, we're going to take a look at a character description, which we wrote about another book character that we did just before Christmas. So, previously we've had a read of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and we wrote a character description about Willy Wonka and about Charlie Bucket. So here is our Willy Wonka character description. Willy Wonka is the owner of a large chocolate factory. He wears a beautiful plum-coloured velvet tailcoat. His trousers are as green as an emerald. He wears a black top hat on his head. Covering his chin is a small, neat, pointed black beard. In his hands, between his fingers, he twirls a fine, gold-topped cane. He is an extraordinary little man who has great skill in producing the finest, most unique chocolate. However, he is also a mean, bossy man who likes to be left alone with his inventions. So today we're going to sentence stack our paragraph. I'm going to show you some examples of sentences to help you. Then it'll be over to you to have a think of your own sentences using the same structure. So please try and make sure that you're writing your own work. I don't want to see too much of my vocabulary or talk about the same nouns as me, so do try and think about different things that you can talk about. It's much more interesting for me when I'm reading your work to see a different piece of writing rather than my own with a few adjectives changed. It gets a little bit boring. So please, try your best because I know you can do this. And I know that I can see I'm looking forward to seeing some really good pieces of work. Okay, so make sure you pause on each new page of the video so that you have time to write your sentences. So I will explain the sentence, give you some examples, have a little chat, and then once I stop talking, that'll be time for you to pause the video so that you can get your sentence written before we move on to the next sentence. If you need a reminder of what these sentences look like, you can always go back to the Willy Wonka text to see what I'm expecting, because they have some quite good examples of the things that we're going to be writing today. Okay then, let's get going. So, here are our two characters. Again, you need to choose one of these characters and continue with that. So making sure that we're not mixing between the two. Choose one, go with that person. Now I might give you examples for each of them just to help you in your writing, to give you some different examples of what you could do. So for sentence 1, we're thinking about who we are describing. So we're basically going to explain who this person is. So my sentence talks about the Night Gardener. So the Night Gardener is a mysterious man who creates amazing topiary art. So I've basically told you who he is and a bit about what he does. So you could talk about William. We know that he's a young boy. We know he lives in an orphanage. And as we can see there, we know that he likes to draw pictures. You might say that he likes birds because he's drawing an owl there. So just in case you didn't know, topiary is the practice of clipping shrubs or trees into ornamental shapes. So some people are incredibly talented and use different objects, tools to shape trees and plants and things into beautiful designs. So our Night Gardener obviously creates wonderful animal designs with his trees. So that's what that word means if you weren't sure. So have a go now at writing your own sentence explaining who one of these two people are. Again, try not to just copy and change the word mysterious or amazing. Do try and make it a little bit more interesting rather than just copying my sentence. Okay, sentence 2, we're going to describe an item of clothing now. So in this, we're going to use a list sentence where we have 3 or 4 adjectives to describe an item. So here I'm talking about the night gardener. So I've said, he wears a smart green tweed suit jacket. Now again, the colours in this picture are quite tricky because they're quite washed out. We start off with not much colour in this book and then we get more and more colourful as it goes on. So you might have to use your imagination a little bit. But think about the night gardener. I'm imagining that he's wearing things that are quite earthy colours, so browns and greens and things like that. Whereas I imagine that poor William is probably wearing something that's more greys and blacks, maybe dark blues, just to show that he's a little bit sad or fed up. So we're doing a list sentence. So because it's a list, we need a comma between each of those adjectives. So smart, comma, green, comma, tweed. Okay. Again, I've shown you in bold which words are my adjectives. So I've only done 3 for this one, but you could do 4 if you like. You don't need any more than that. It just gets a little bit silly if you do. Make sure all of your adjectives make sense in this sentence, but try not to repeat something. So don't say that it's a small, tiny. You don't need to say something about the size of something twice. Okay. So again, don't forget your commas. It's important since you are writing a list. Okay. So sentence 3, we're going to describe an item of clothing with a simile this time. So this can be quite tricky. So again, remember, using a simile means that we're saying something is as or like something else. So we're comparing it to something else. I've given you 2 examples for this one, for both William and for the night gardener, because I think this one is quite a difficult one to do. So for William, I've said that his clothes were as grey as a snow-filled sky. Now, before it snows, the sky can come quite dark, the clouds are quite thick and quite grey. So I think in my head, it creates quite a sombre picture, quite a dark, dreary picture, a bit like Grimlock Lane itself. So I thought his clothes would reflect that. I've then also done for the night gardener that his bag was a soft yellow like a buttercup. So you can see that it's slightly yellow in that picture. So I've made it sound a little bit brighter than it is. And I've compared it to a buttercup, which is a flower, because obviously the night gardener works with plants. So I thought it would be a nice comparison to make between him with something from nature. Okay, number 4 then. Again, we're describing an item of clothing. And this time we are going to use a prepositional phrase at the end of the sentence. Okay, so think about a part of their clothing, something that they're wearing, and describe where it is. So their hat, well, obviously that is on top of their head. Their shoes, you could say on their feet or on their body. What are they wearing? And just describe where something is. So tell me about something that they're wearing and then describe it at the end of your sentence. Okay? Sentence number 5. So describe a feature of the character's face. So start with a prepositional phrase and then include a list of 3 or 4 adjectives to describe the feature. So for this one, you could talk about their eyes or their smile, or for the night gardener, you could talk about his moustache. So think about how you're going to start it. So a prepositional phrase, you could say on his face, or for the night gardener, you could say behind his glasses and talk about his eyes. So think about describing how you're going to tell me that you talk about his face, and then think about how you're going to describe something that is on his face. So you might say that they've got, William might have quite sad eyes, so think about some adjectives that you could use to describe how we know his eyes look quite sad. Sentence number 6. So here you're going to describe what he is doing. Okay, so again, we've got the night gardener is walking down the street. He's carrying a ladder. He's using a walking stick or a cane. He's also got a roll of fabric on his shoulder. William is sitting down on a log or a tree stump. He's also using a stick to draw a picture of an owl in the dirt. So let's have a think of how we can write a sentence. So we're going to do a 2-place sentence for this one. So it basically means we're going to talk about 2 different places, so using 2 different prepositional phrases. So we're going to start our sentence with 2 prepositional phrases. So we'll need to put a comma after the first one and after the second one. So we need 2 commas for our prepositional phrases. And then we're going to do an expanded noun phrase to describe the noun. So that's going to be at least 3 commas in this sentence, so quite a lot of commas going on. So the nouns you could think about are the stick that William is holding, the ladder that the night gardener is holding, or the cane or walking stick. As I said before, you could talk about the fabric on his shoulder or anything else really that you want to in this picture that describes what they're doing. So I've given you 2 examples here of my 2-place sentence starter. So this first one says under his arm, in his hand. So this one's about the night gardener and about the ladder in his hand. So he's carrying it under his arm, or you could do it next to his body possibly, and it's in his hand. So under his arm, in his hand, he's carrying and then you describe the ladder to finish your sentence. The next one I've given you is in his hand, between his fingers. So this one could describe either character. For the night gardener, you could do it to describe that he's holding a walking stick, and you could describe that walking stick. Is it old? Is it fancy? Is it quite posh? Is it just a rough stick? Whatever you want to describe it as. And for William, again, he's holding the small twig, which he's using as a pencil, effectively, to draw that picture. So sentence number 7 is going to describe the character's personality. So we're going to use 2 adjectives in this sentence to describe a noun, and then we're going to use another 2 adjectives to describe a different noun. So you need to pick 2 nouns for this sentence even from your picture to describe their personality. So you may not have noticed, but William is drawing an owl in this picture. Now this is the first picture we really see of William. The night gardener is walking past him. So William is sat outside of the orphanage drawing an owl on the ground. The night gardener walks past this. That night is when the night gardener creates a fantastic owl tree outside of the orphanage, because obviously he's seen William drawing that owl and has then made the tree. So from this, we can tell that the night gardener is observant. He notices things because he noticed what William liked. He likes birds, so then he created something for William. We could also say that he's kind because we know that he creates these lovely pieces of artwork which particularly are linked to what people like. So in the next one we have a house with lots of cats around it, so he makes a cat tree and so on like that. So we know a little bit about the night gardener, particularly that he's quite a kind character. And then again about William, we know that he's a young boy. In this picture he looks quite sad, quite lonely possibly. So you could write about that somehow. So we're going to describe 2 things in a sentence and use an expanded noun phrase for each noun. Now, that sounds a little bit confusing. I've just talked a lot about what you could talk about in this sentence. So here's your example from the Willy Wonka one. So he is an extraordinary little man. So for that one, you could do the night gardener. He is a kind and generous man, maybe, or a lonely young man for William, who has great skill in producing the finest, most unique chocolate. So there you could talk about the night gardener creating some fantastic designs from the trees, or for William could talk about maybe the fact that he lives on his own, or doesn't seem to have any friends to play with, or that he likes to draw pictures. Lots of different things you could talk about there. Okay, for our final sentence then, we're going to carry on describing the character's personality. So, again, make sure you don't repeat yourself after the last sentence. So this time we're using an expanded noun phrase and using who. So, he is also a mean, bossy man who likes to be left alone with his inventions. So we've got our expanded noun phrase, with our 2 adjectives describing this person, who likes to, or who lives, or whatever. So you could say for William, he likes to draw pictures, who lives in an orphanage, or who lives on Grimlock Lane. The night gardener, you could talk about the fact that he is someone who creates fantastic artwork or who travels around creating these trees and things. So there's a lot of different things you could do there, but try to use who in your sentence to tell me something more about that person. Tell me what they like to do or where they live or something that, you know, they actually do. Okay, so hopefully you have now got a fantastic paragraph there. I know it takes a while to write like this because it's so much to think about. Take your time, make sure that you really think about your sentences, make sure it makes sense. And that's that. So I will see you on Thursday for another English video. Please remember to email us and share a picture of your work on Twitter if you don't want to email. Miss Lofthouse and I really like seeing your work. Always puts a smile on our faces when we can see what everyone's getting up to. And it's just nice to hear from everyone, really. So I will see you on Thursday. Bye.